Shalom Aleichem, beautiful and wonderful people. Chesed HaShem. Chesed HaShem to the people in body and the ones online. And a deep hakar satov. Thank you very, very much for the messages. And Be'ezras Hashem, my deeper and deepest wantings are quite simple. And that is to upgrade our lives. Be'ezras Hashem. And what does that mean? That we could live more wholesomely. We could live with emunah, we could live with bitachon, we can live with devekus, and the experiential meaning of those words. Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach. So, let's start with 2 points. And the first point is a point that we've discussed a number of times already, and it's something that we, Be'ezras Hashem, with the grace of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, get used to. And that is bringing a mergence, bringing a relationship, bringing a yichud between the inner world, the world of thoughts, feelings and physical sensation, the nefesh, and the outer world. There's change and there's transition. Change is that we're very prone, it's very natural to change from an activity to an activity. And the question is, what's going on in our internal world? And the Boira Olam, and this is found in several places. One place it's found is in Hilchos Rambam in the 7th parak of Mezuzah, where the Rambam tells us when you come in to a makom, you kiss the mezuzah, or you see the mezuzah, you take note of the mezuzah, because we don't necessarily kiss the mezuzah, but you take note of the mezuzah to be loyal to the Rambam, and have an intention that I'm now moving from one place to another place. And the moving, the change, should be met with transitioning. And as we've said, every junction point in Yiddishkeit that involves change typically comes with transitioning. So for example, when we speak about, as we said, the world of marriage, we have a chassan here, Baruch Hashem, marriage and Sheva Brachos. Marriage is change, Sheva Brachos is transitioning. When we're speaking about Shabbos, we have the week coming into Shabbos, we have Kiddush, and we have Shabbos going into Chol, we have Havdalah. When we are speaking about death, so there is the Levaya, and then there is the Shiva, there is the Shleishim, there is the Shana, the Yortzeit. Question that's asked, I remember asking Rav Meir Belsky, why is it that we have, in regards to death, the Shiva, Shleishim, and the world of the Yortzeit? And he said very simply, death is not natural. We were never meant to die. Death is not natural. As we know, Adam and Chava were meant to live forever. When they ate from the tree, they introduced death. So death is something we'll never ever get used to. And it's something that every single year we have to connect to in order to develop ourselves and heal ourselves. We're taking questions at the end, but yeah, interrupt and ask.
On that point, was death created on your Sheshimei Bereshis, or is this something new?
Something new. Death is something new, and in regards, for example, to evolution, there's many things we can evolve out of. We'll never evolve out of death because death isn't natural. So a person, and it's odd, it's sad, a person may know somebody is graduating from this world, but when they actually graduate, typically they will always be sad, even though they've been primed for months on end, because it's not natural. And hopefully we will move into a shifting consciousness where we won't experience that again. When we're speaking about the other elements and worlds of halacha we have with Shabbos, Hilchos Shabbos, Rambam tells us that, we did this in Chabura, that the Nakuda is when it comes to Shabbos, you should sit and be mizbeinen. It's Shabbos now. So we have this Nakuda of change and transitioning. Al pi Kabbalah, every Keser becomes the Malchus and every Malchus becomes the Keser. So the backdrop in the way the world was created, all the spiritual realms, the Rashash, the Arizal come to express this as well. So with that as a Hagdama, with that as our first Hagdama for today. And I just want to remind everyone, I said I'll repeat myself. I will repeat myself. I really don't have time for not getting this from the perspective of I'm bored and I heard this already. Avodat Hashem is going over and over and over. The world of Amalek, the world of Eruv Rav want us to forget. And I don't have time for non-hungry people. I believe and I want to speak to healthy, hungry people, people who are hungry for growth. And if you're hungry for growth, you'll hear something until you're bored senseless. And you'll still turn up and you'll still take achrayus. And this is something very important because people have often said to me, oh, you've repeated that before. I said yes, and now I'm going to repeat it again. I'll tell you why, because when I work with people and I'm speaking to people and somebody says something to me that we mentioned 3 weeks ago, there's at times room for forgiveness that they forgot if they heard it once or twice. But how many people I speak to where I say the same ideas and I'm looking at a blank face? Now, I will say that there's responsibility for the communicator. So it could be Rabbi Gerzi did not communicate the idea properly. I take full responsibility. So I have to navigate and find new ways of communicating. But then there is the makabel, and sometimes the makabel is, just hasn't heard. And the nakuda of having the availability, again, change and transition. If you're present, you can hear and receive a lot more. And I have high standards. I don't implement my standards because a lot of the time they're not met. There's a couple of people who I don't mind to implement certain standards, but I know that my teachers had very, very high expectations of me. I probably failed miserably a lot of the time, but they knew I was in the game. And I believe I'm speaking especially here to people who are hungry for growth, who will take radical responsibility, achrayus, me'achuz, achrayus, mamish, the deepest achrayus. And as well, I don't mind repeating something. And if somebody leaves because I've repeated it in their board, so be it. So be it. That's something very important. Change and transition, having the ability to be present, having the ability to have room to hear. And the next nakuda that I think we can start experimenting with, and this is something that some of you chevra know already, and Be'ezras HaShem, deepen our avodah, and that is Habbatah. So if we take a moment and just ask yourself, you can ask yourself, what am I feeling in my body right now? And you can perform a body scan. What am I feeling in my body right now? And notice from your feet, just gently moving through all the way up your body. What am I feeling in my body? Temperature. Tightness or looseness. Non-judgmental observation. Ma ani margish. What am I feeling in my body? Just moving up through your midsection, moving up through your stomach, lower back. What am I feeling in my body right now in the present moment? Moving up to my neck, back of my head, ears, front of my head, to the top of my head. Just performing simply a body scan and checking in. What am I feeling within my body? And the next question, with the response of awareness and non-judgmental observation. What emotions am I feeling right now? What feelings am I feeling right now? And the truth is, if we want to label them, we can, and if we don't want to label them, we don't have to. And simply, to the best of our ability, what thoughts am I experiencing right now? Are there any thoughts that are coming up to reveal themselves? Reminding us that thoughts arise as imagery and sound. What am I thinking? And if you would like, take a couple of breaths in, deep breaths in, Just allow yourself to let go. And on the breath out, relax your body. Okay. Just ask yourself, as you have involved yourself in this avodah, what do you notice? What changes do you notice? And anything that involves a retethering to our body is a natural retethering, even though we may not have the expertise in language. It's a retethering to nefesh, to ruach, and as well to neshama. The natural consequence of retethering to your body in the way of Habbatah, experiencing the modes, naturally can open one up to the wisdom of the soul that's always there, the wisdom of the neshama that's always there. HaShem is always wanting to give to us. The question is, do we have the capacity and capability to experience and absorb that light? And that's something very important to understand. Really, there's not much on our first shlav of connection to the Bara Olam. There isn't much we have to do. It sounds odd at first because we're constantly encouraged, do more, do more, do more. There's a reality where it's about doing less. There's a reality to recognize there's a human being and the human doing. And the human being and the human doing need to be friends. We have to have the availability to be a human being where it's just about being in the state of das, where I can relate to my internal data as well as my external data. But from the place of beingness, I can then relate to it differently. My doingness then is a different form of doing. When a person doesn't relate to the human beingness, when a person is not relating to their data, and there's an entanglement between consciousness and their own internal data and the data outside, then as they do, how clean is it, so to speak? There can be an entanglement. So when a person's interacting with reality, so to speak, from a place of a clean screen. So I'm present, I know in my mind I'm relating to data, that's going to influence how I interact in this moment. And the question is, am I present enough just to recognize I'm relating to my data as I relate to that which is going on? Do I have the availability even to share to the other person? To share with the person that I'm with? Okay, I'm relating to my data right now. I want you to know, as I'm going to speak to you, I'm like really exhausted. I'm running on like 45 minutes sleep, and I really hope I can hold a good space, but if I bite your head off, don't take it personally. So that's already a darga. That's already an amazing reality when I can share my own internal data as I meet a moment. But the more that I can be a human being and move from fight and flight to rest and digest, move from a space of fight, freeze, whatever it may be in regards to the trauma responses, then I can work with my internal data, share my internal data to impact how I relate to that which is going on. And then the deeper and more proficient I come, there are times where through different targilim I can melt away that data. I can dissolve that internal data. So we can call that coming to a state of menuchas hanefesh, other states that we can call Yishuv Hadas. So Be'ezras Hashem, okay. So with that as a Hagdama, and again all of these are Hagdamas, Shabbatoich Hagdamas. These are introductions within introductions, as Rabbeinu tells us. So we are on, in my version, page 19. And we are at the paragraph, the I. If you remember last week, we did a so to speak, Shir Klali, where we went through a lot of what we spoke about over the last several weeks and tried to tie it together and took questions. So what we'll do, Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach, we will We'll see. We'll have junction points for questions. Questions. Okay. So, the last paragraph, 2 weeks ago, we spoke about how we could ignore or explore. So I can ignore the data or I can explore the data. I have that availability to ignore or explore my inner narrative. And there's times where I want to ignore. So if I'm davening and I really want to try and work on davening with kavanah, if information comes up, a thought, feeling, whatever it may be, arises, I may say to that thought, I know you're there, hi. And right now I'm saying Shema. I'm going to gently push you here, taking note of you, and I'm going to refocus on to the words of Shema. So you've got the Sur Mirav Asay Tov.
Which page was it?
Page 19, the I. Do you have it?
I think so. The title of the chapter is?
The I.
Yeah.
So, the part of you that's being aware, that's witnessing all of that data, everything that's going on, is the part of us that we want to talk to a little bit more today. So, however, the question remains, who am I? My mentors have shared with me the following. First, come to notice, come to realize and understand that you are not your physical sensations, your emotions, or all your thinking. What we can suggest is that you are the part that can be aware of them. I do want to share with us a dichotomy. I'd even say a paradox. And that is that when we're speaking about this nakuda of I, which is again a bad word really to use, in Lashon HaKodesh we use the term das, or there's other words with other shitot. The part that we are speaking to is a part that if you can be aware of it, you're now not it. If you are not it, you're not speaking about that part which is you. So in the second Kuntras awakening, we say it as following. The Ramchal, based on Chazal, based on Gemara Brachas, tells us, halavai, we should pray all day. Halavai, we should pray all day. The Ramchal actually takes another step. And he says, halavai, we could be silent all day. And the reason why he says, halavai, we should be silent all day, because when we're silent, we're connected, so to speak, we're in the light, we're in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The moment we open up our mouth to daven, we're now separate from, so to speak, this light, from Ein Sof. We're now separated. The moment I open up my mouth and speak is separation. The moment I think, feel, or sense, it's separation from source. There's a beautiful Ropshitzer, and we'll probably mention this again, so we're priming hopefully for the next countries. But when Bnei Israel received the Torah at Har Sinai, we know when HaKadosh Baruch Hu spoke, they died. And they ran to Moshe Rabbeinu, and they say to Moshe Rabbeinu, do us a favor, please. Can you please say what Hashem wants? Because every single time Hashem is sharing, we're dying. So Moshe Rabbeinu comes and he shares the Torah of Moshe. He shares the Torah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Heilige Zayda, the Ropshitzer, asks the question. He says, I don't understand something. If the highest darga is Yichud, if the highest darga is to be completely and utterly one and enveloped in Ein Sof, why are they so bothered they're dying? Death is the highest Yichud. The complete and utter oneness with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the complete and utter mamash, devekus with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So why are they bothered they're dying? Because tachlis is that all of us want to have a sense of self. So we want devekus. We don't want devekus. Because if we have devekus, we don't exist. Maybe we want to experience devekus for a little bit in order to just have a sense that you want a sense of identity. It's a very, very deep nakuda. Rabbi Singer would say, the Pilsner Rav would say, that once a year we have Rishus to experience this level of Devekus. When is this? Purim. When a person drinks on Purim and they drink so much that they experience a adala yada, they go to sleep. When you've gone to sleep, at that moment you're experiencing adala yada and you don't even know you're experiencing adala yada. When a person drinks and they drink so much that they are completely out, they don't experience the adala yada. It's a paradox, but this is the nakuda that we're speaking about. When we're speaking about this nakuda of true I, which is odd because I within itself is identity, it's separate. But this nakuda of awareness, this nakuda of das that we're speaking about is a nakuda where you can't really speak about it. You could speak around it. So if you imagine a piece of wood and there's a hole in the piece of wood, so you can speak around the fact that there is a hole, there's something missing from the piece of wood. There's a discoloration, there's a shadow. So to speak about the fact that there's a hole is just describing something missing, but not describing it, so to speak. You could speak around it. You can't speak to consciousness. You could speak around consciousness. You can't speak to das. You could speak around das. And this is one of the major issues that we find. We have to refine our language because the true you is behind all the animation. The true you is between all of the animation. Behind your thoughts, between your thoughts, the backdrop, that's who you are. And neshama comes into consciousness. And again, consciousness comes into the toolkit of the guf, which includes the three modes of experience. But when we're speaking about the truer self, it's a very difficult conversation. And this is one reason, for example, when you really go into this place of das, this really inner place of das, Rabbi Nachman, for example, in Sichas Aran Aleph tells us that it's your personal subjective experience that you can't share with anyone else. The truth is, there is a healthy existential loneliness that we are to feel. This is what lonely man of faith, Rabbi Soloveitchik, is speaking to, another of my heroes. Lonely man of faith, ish devekus, as one of my teachers would call it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's actually healthy. And for majority of people, because again they've been led out of what it is to be a tzelem Elokim, they fear that existential loneliness. But actually there's nothing wrong with it. There's always a part of you that's always going to be in exile. And the question is, how do you hold that? There's always part of you and various parts of you that are always going to experience a loneliness. Well, get used to it. Because if we don't get used to it, that's where so much damage comes from. You know, people say to me very often, oh, I don't fit anywhere. Yeah, I know, we're in exile. No, I really don't fit anywhere. Yeah. Like, it's true. You don't fit, I don't fit. Yeah, but you seem that you like, you've got this, and you go, no, there's a deep, when you really come to the depth of human experience, there's always an existential loneliness. There's nothing wrong with it. And that's where you and your relationship with the divine comes in. This is what Rabbi Nachman is speaking about. We are, as Savas Rivash, Mamash at the beginning tells us, Vav, we are aliens in this world. Neshama and Das, Neshama and Ruach, come into this world. We're not from this world. We'll always feel slightly out of place. And there's nothing wrong speaking to that. There's a level of maturity that we need to own. And this is found in another kuntras, maybe we'll get to, I don't know. But Kitzur Derech HaShem, where we speak about the tension of the inside world and the outside world. That everybody has their internal world that they so deeply wish on whatever level to communicate to another. But the fact is that there will always be this tension. We can't even fully communicate what we want to communicate to ourselves at times. So this nakuda of self is a conversation within itself, and we're not doing it justice here. This kuntras isn't to do it justice. We've got other papers that speak to this a lot more. But in context to becoming more self-aware, das tachtoin chitzoni and pnimi, we have to speak to this a little bit. But again, We're only touching the surface in order to have a conversation to create distinction, hachnan, havdalah, and separation. To get our minds thinking a little bit. To become more aware, awakened. Yes?
When you say that the minute you start speaking, you become separate from, I mean, I definitely feel like sometimes that's true, but I also have the experience of speaking and feeling like something is speaking through me. Is that not being connected to?
That 100%. So when you are speaking with consciousness and you are that conduit, 1,000%. 1,000%. But you're still separate. The fact that you are using words, the fact that by nature we're told that the mystics explain that dibur is an aspect of din. Dibur is separation.
Because it's making it finite.
Correct.
It's taking
Something which is
and putting it into.
yes. So
Even
each
though I don't feel like it's.
what part of you is not feeling that? The nefesh part of you.
No, now in looking, I'm not talking about when I'm in the experience, I'm not talking about that, I'm talking about now reflecting back on the experience and having an intellectual conversation. My reflection is it doesn't feel any level of separation.
Correct. It may not feel any level of separation. Which part is not feeling any level of separation? Remember, there's an neshama, ruach, and nefesh. You have many different parts within. Which part? I would say that you're not sure which part.
I don't even understand the question.
So the point is, by definition, speech is separation.
Separating what?
Separating from source.
Can you separate from source?
Well, on a certain level of nefesh, you can. So remember, there's two layers. There's a layer of non-separation and hashgacha pratis, where everything is the Bora Olam. But then there's another side of it where a person's egocentric.
Yeah, but you're not separated.
But in your experience, in the experience in life, there's an element of separation. Why do we bother to work on ourselves? Let it be an illusion.
Okay,
Do you remember?
Really separated.
But we can't use that term. That term doesn't work. When people say we're not really separated, it's a bubamaisa, because in my experience, when I'm feeling pain, that seems ever so real. When I feel distant, that feels very real. So
Yeah,
until
it's like a baby being in the room and doesn't know that its mother's outside the room. So in the baby's experience, they're not with their mother, but the reality is they're with their mother.
again, reality and experience are two different things.
So you're saying that we can have an experience of being separated. We're not separated. We can have an experience.
Correct. We can have an experience of being separated in that moment.
To know that we're not actually separated.
It doesn't make a difference. People say that, but your neurobiology doesn't care less. Your neurobiology, and more than that, if you say to somebody in a time of pain, I want you to know really you're not separated, it's the worst thing.
But if I say it to myself and it doesn't feel like the worst thing.
It depends on you, and it depends on your inner subjective world. Some people tell themselves, some people, so it brings you nechama, other people it brings tremendous pain. Other people it brings tremendous pain. So the point is, this is what we said earlier in our text, that we take our own experience as real. And the levels of maturity that we want to meet are levels of maturity where I can hold without pain, and more than that, I can hold, and it is a nachama, that I know right now I feel very, very separated, but the truth is, I know at the same time, which is paradoxical, that this is hashgacha pratis and it's all HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The nakuda though, in this world is a world of separation. So speech, by definition, is separation. This is a paradox. It's only truly through separation I can actually connect. But we're not going there right now. But just to hear those words. Yes?
I just want to clarify. When the Rabbi is saying that when we speak, it's automatic separation, we're talking just like on a technical level because speech is a product of...
Even when we think, yes.
Breath
Yes.
would be unlimited potential.
Breath as well, by the way.
Right.
Anything that has a rhythm, stillness and silence, That's das. Das is stillness and silence. The moment I breathe, the moment I think, the moment I feel, the moment I physically sense, the moment I speak, the moment I do something, by definition, that's separation. But it's only...
It's just like a step closer. I guess breath is like a step closer to
Source.
Source.
Yes.
So
It's
like
it's a
understand
step
that
closer to
there's-
connecting.
Right.
Source
The
to...
breath before you speak has all the potential words in it.
The breath in.
Right. The breath in before you speak has all potential possibilities in it. But when you speak, you've chosen a specific sound, a specific word with a specific meaning.
When a person has spoken, when a person is speaking, as you said, you are choosing a specific thought, a specific word, and that all is to do with separation. And we can't run away from this paradox. All we can do is hold of this paradox. And by the way, this is one of the mission statements of Am Yisrael. It is a nation who lives with and lives by paradox, and it takes a level of maturity to do that, and that's okay. That's okay. Okay, let's carry on. In the language of the mystics, you are consciousness, you are awareness, you are the witness. Again, we're labeling this das. You are the part that is aware of what's going on inside of you. You are the part that is conscious of what's happening around you and above you right now. The challenge is, this part is difficult to describe and is difficult to experience on its own. We only start to know who we are through knowing who we are not. Again, we're speaking specifically to Das Tachton. We're here trying to create a logical, linear journey. What does that mean? What does a logical, linear journey mean? It means that I'm trying to share with you sequentially, step by step, a way to shift in, a way to move in to a state that naturally may not be so apparent to us. So this is something really important. These baby steps, again, you may get completely bored of if you get it. I don't care. Okay. For me it's important. I need this. That's more important, l'chaim. For me it's important. I need to remind myself of this. So thank you for listening. Our fleeting thoughts, our feelings and our physical sensations are not, sorry, 1 second. Our fleeting thoughts, feelings and physical sensations are not constant. They're not constant. They have a rhythm, an ebb and flow. They're always transient. You, consciousness, awareness, and the witness is constant. Consciousness was there the day you were born and has consistently been there throughout your life and will remain with you always. So it's something that isn't subject on whatever level to time and space.
Always.
1 second. Let's take a question. There. Now we made that which was also butter. Yes.
Always even after death.
Always even after death, according to Shitot. Yes. Yes.
Not all.
Okay. What we can suggest is when we are born into this world, there was an overwhelming experience of physicality enveloping us. We forgot ever so quickly that we are consciousness. So before we know it, we think we are our physicality. We think we are our feelings and our thinkings. Materialism takes over. And when materialism takes over, it appears really, really real. And when we're dealing with this really real experience, we have to be ever so careful how we start to, so to speak, re-tether ourselves to the truer self. And it takes time. It takes time. We really have to be mizbainan on this. And the reason why this is important to us, just zooming out and a reorientation, the reason why this is important to us is because the more we understand as humanity, we function mechanically a certain way. And the more we can experience the way that we function, life seems to improve. The more we know this, you actually have to work less in order to live well. When you think you are materialism, when you think that you are your thoughts, feelings, and physical sensation, there's levels of constant exhaustion, trying to hold everything that's going on. But when you could be present, center yourself, and you could remind yourself, look at that. I'm consciousness and I have a neshama. My neshama is this high dimension of whatever it is connected to Ein Sof. And I want to allow that light to come into and flood my consciousness. And then I want it to pass through my consciousness and flood into my nefesh. And then in every activity that I do, allow it through, which again has a whole Torah within itself. This is the fundamental question that Shlomo HaMelech asks when he builds and completes the Beis HaMikdash. How can something finite dwell? How can something infinite, that the heavens and can't hold the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we have something finite here that can hold HaKadosh Baruch Hu? So this Nakuda is Hashem doesn't live in the physical world. Hashem lives through the physical world. We are a Kliya, we are a Merkava. It allows through the Shekhinah. So when I realize, I'm relating to data, and I can pull back from that data and just relate to the fact that I'm a clean slate always. And that Ein Sof, which is pure love, which is Echad, and this language that we use, can shine through me in everything that I do, that even my data becomes loving. Even my data, Hod, I'm having good feelings. Netzach, I'm having good thoughts. Netzach, I'm having good feelings and physical sensations. Yisod, I can stand up tall and proud. So when I'm working on myself, when I'm developing myself, the natural consequence is typically we become more loving, we become more compassionate, we become more patient, and we feel better. We laugh a lot more. Humor, yitzchak, tzchok. So you have, again, Devekus, Emunah, Bitachon, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Where's Das? Das sits at the top of Ruach. Ruach is to do with Devekus, Emunah, Bitachon, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Yitzchak is Din. Din is having the ability to pull back, which is to do with the mechanisms of consciousness. And what is Das? Das, if related to Din, which is related to Tzimtzum, is tzchok, laughter. So the natural consequence is that you experience far more humor in your life. When we become more conscious, we realize humorously, I'm always relating to data. The little bits of data dancing on the stage inside of me and dancing on the stage outside of me. And we look and we laugh. We feel different, we feel better. And this is why it's important, because we right now are in a world where there's so much more suffering than I would suggest there needs to be. I say that with caution. There's so much more suffering than there needs to be. And when we're re-educated into the Tzelem Elokim, suffering is experienced differently. It's much lighter. When a person can pull back from an experience, or when a person can have a laugh with, I had this morning a couple, and they would over the years have really, really good arguments that would spend months in silence. And Baruch Hashem, we've been meeting every few months, and I've given them avodas to do. And Tachlis is that they had an argument, and he burst out laughing. She flipped out. He burst out laughing, but it wasn't laughing at her. It was just humorous. The data's so funny. And she looked, and she burst out laughing as well. Now, once upon a time, there would be a mismatch. And if he would burst out, he was terrified of her. It was like really bad relationship. He couldn't do anything like that. And if he did, you're laughing at me while I'm getting upset. But because they're both now on the same page, and they realize we're both relating to data. So he now feels safe, and she feels safe. They both feel safe. He laughed at her flipping out. And then she looked and she goes, wow, okay, I think we should go on like a date after this. Kids have gone back to school. We're going to go on a date. that would have taken them months to recover from. So this is something incredibly important. The more we know how we work and the more we know that we are relating to something and we can qualify and quantify that something, and I'm that part behind all the animation, changes everything. So any questions on that? I saw you had your hand up?
Yeah.
Yes.
What's the? What I don't understand is why the fact that I'm relating to data inside and outside. Why does that make the situation humorous?
It's not that the data makes the situation humorous. It's easy for me to laugh. When a person believes their data, when a person believes their experience, they could take things really, really seriously. So, for example, one nakuda of trauma, when a person's experienced some sort of trauma, one outgrowth of trauma is a person takes themselves ever so seriously that they have to feel that they are on guard because no one else is going to protect them. But when a person is in a situation where they feel safe, really, we don't have to take ourselves so seriously in many areas of our lives where we otherwise would take ourselves so seriously. But the nakuda of Yitzchak, tzchok, is irony. The nakuda of Yitzchak, tzchok, is that this world outside of us for sure is a world of information. And how do we treat that information? The world inside, subjectively, is a world of information. And when I know that I'm relating to information and that information is speaking to me, that information is a communication. So, Ramchal, the more I work on this, the more I become conscious, we create a cycle. Light is coming down. I now can expand and accept and absorb this light. And this light can flush and flood down into my nefesh. And anything and everything I do is done with this consciousness of Ein Sof. There's a Kodesh Baruch Hu in the world. So that's number one. The more I start that cycle and I shift out of my nefesh, so das is, so to speak, above nefesh, and neshama shining down through the ruach, through the das, into the nefesh, and I create this cycle, what then starts to happen is, by definition, typically more than less, I start to move into feeling good. So there's cheshbon ha-nefesh, there's tikkun ha-nefesh, so I start to feel better, and really the background of that better is different. I feel different. Usually that different at first is a bit confusing, but then it moves into feeling better. And then as I feel better, percentage-wise of feeling grounded, having the ability to contain and hold things that are going on, having the ability to let go of data, which again, we could learn techniques in order to let go of hirhurim, regesh, rikshe, gufani that are not helpful. Then what starts to happen, actually, when I do interface with something, that's HaShem Yisbarach asking me to metaken that thought, feeling, or physical sensation. And there's different ways we can do that. We could breathe in, look at that. I just had a judgment call on that person. Now, I don't need to know why that happened. It could come from a previous Gilgul. I looked at this person and said, they're disgusting. I don't need to know where that came from. That's bechina of seichel. There's times where I don't need to know where that came from. What I do need to know is I'm relating to a hirhur in the present moment, and right now, my avodah is to breathe and let go. It's to let go. Slicha, mechila, I'm sorry, and mechila, forgiveness. Hakar Satov, I thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu for every situation. Okay, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ahav, I love you, Yira, awe, inspiration. And you create a cycle where you can let go of that noise that's going to hurt you in the way you relate to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, yourself and others, and you're healing. You're healing. People speak about the past. A person may have gone through something difficult in the past, but for sure in the moment I'm a healer. I'm a healer. Everything is to do with healing. And we're speaking in terms of healing as in tikkun. And that's coming from the world of refuah. Refuah is what? Reish Pei Aleph, Reish Pei Hey. Refuah is Tiferes, the same root. So Nakud of Tiferes Yisrael is that the more that I'm coming to meet the center spheres, which is really all of Rabbi Nachman Lakutei Maharan. It's the middle spheres. That's where the tikkun, the fixing, the healing needs to take place. And the more I can come to that place of recognizing that my life, ultimately, I should be living well, I should be living good. Ultimately, I should be living well and good. When I forget my true identity, it seems to be I don't live as well and as good. When I remember my true identity, it seems to be I do live better. When someone can remind me in a non-condescending way, center yourself, take a breath. Hi. Neshama, Ruach, and Nefesh. To shine that loving light into us, we improve. I'm relating to data. I'm non-data. I'm behind all that data. My true identity is behind all of that data. I'm the clean slate that allows the light to be absorbed, and then I can share that light with the rest of me, the other parts of me. So unless we are guided, like I'm writing and sharing wisdom that was shared with me, we can live our whole life where the true self is enveloped by the physical sensations, our emotions, and our thinking. Yet the moment this natural truth is shared, like my mentors are sharing with me and now channeling these wisdoms and these teachings and sharing it with you, we can make room for a natural liberation and clarity, a clarity that starts to emerge. We start to connect to our natural self. We start to relate to ourselves, the world around us, and the world of spirit in a different way. We can come to realize that either our minds are a garden of paradise or a purgatory of hell. Which of these is dependent on my level of consciousness, which I can choose. I've been thinking about these teachings, I've heard from my mentors, I reflect upon them. An important process is happening within me. An important process is happening within me as I increasingly appreciate the truth of these teachings, not only cerebrally, but experientially as well. There's a quiet, a calmness, a contentment with anything and everything that's going on, unless my consciousness falls into my thinking, feeling, and physical sensations, forgetting who I truly am. Whenever I remember who I am, I naturally come back to my truer self. So this nakuda is an incredibly important nakuda. The availability to be yourself is there. The capability is there. Takes time, takes effort. It's not something that happens overnight, especially if we never heard these ideas before. But the reorientation to Tzelem Elokim is a journey that within a short amount of time breeds a lot of fruit, produces a lot of fruit. And there's stages, some are more subtle, and within those subtle stages there are even more subtler stages. And the more we become Balei Das, the greater availability there is to be connected to those subtleties. So for example, at first one may think, if I'm doing something wrong, I have to correct it. I have to correct it straight away. But then you may realize, 1 second, there's actually a more subtler stage that if I'm doing something wrong, become aware that I'm doing something wrong. When I've really become aware that I'm doing something wrong, then I could really start to change it. But if I jump to changing something and I haven't dealt with that part, that doing something wrongness is just going to come back to me. And that may seem odd. This is based on a teaching I learned from the Alexander Rebbe, who he showed me this in a letter from the Yismach Yisroel. So the Alexander Rebbe, Zichron Livracha, he said as following, that once there was an individual who would smoke, who came to his Zayda, and the individual was trying to stop smoking. And the Rebbe said to him, first realize that you're smoking. First realize that you're smoking. Take the cigarette, hold it very, very, very slowly as you're going to smoke the cigarette, and do this for a couple of weeks. And he showed him a pasuk. I've got it written down. It's beautiful, beautiful pasuk. I can't remember the pasuk offhand, but in this Torah, the Yismach Yisrael explains that real tshuva can only occur when you realize you're doing something wrong. If you, on whatever level, don't realize you're doing something wrong and it's against HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then you'll never heal it. You have to realize you're doing something wrong. In order to realize you're doing something wrong, you have to become aware that you're doing something wrong. You have to be misbainen. And this is something very important in the tshuva process. There's a similar story with Rabbi Singer as well, and smoking. This nakuda of slowing everything down, that the neurobiology could become in touch. You as consciousness could really become in touch with the neurobiology. That enables you to really process what's going on and, so to speak, slow down and then recode that data. And then from there, have the availability to shift out of that behavior into another behavior. But the point is, that's now not your identity. From an identity perspective, I am not this. I don't do this. I am this. And that identity comes from such a deep-rooted place. This is found in Mishlei, in the 24th Perek, 4, I believe, where we're told that Das has many chadarim. Consciousness has rooms, has chambers. This is speaking potentially to the world of our belief systems. This is speaking to the world of inner identity, that all of us live with identities. And if consciousness is not in tandem with those identities, which is relating then to the way we manifest in this world, our identity will always end up coming back and ruling our actions in the world of nefesh. So what we're saying here is, the way I view myself from an identity perspective, so there is consciousness, then we have these layers and levels of how I identify with myself. I have to make sure they're in tandem actually with my behaviors. So I am consciousness, and the way consciousness in me manifests are through these values and identities. And then those values and identities will manifest in the nefesh. There's a lot to talk about, but just to say it in passing, there's these layers, these shifts. That's what I'm speaking to right now. The more we become balei das, the more we realize, I may change something, but did I think about what came beforehand? Do I think about what comes beforehand? So for example, I am consciousness, and I've got a behavior I want to change. Where did that behavior come from? Is that behavior connected to a belief, connected to a identity I've picked up over time? And typically something happens once, and if it happens strongly enough, what will start to happen is that pattern will be found in other areas in life. And then that pattern becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. That comes into nefesh. But at one point, there was a switch in identity. And identity is, so to speak, very high up there in consciousness. So we have consciousness, and then das has chadarim. So the more I become a baldas, the more I realize, oh, look at that. I first need to, when I work on myself, validate those parts. Because the more I could validate those parts, it seems to be, then I could work better with them in order to make change. So Yiddishkeit is subtlety. It's all about subtlety. Das, to become a baldas, the term that Rabbi Yisrael Salant uses, dak dak. It's subtle, very, very, very subtle. And we're living in a world today, dak, subtlety. And we're living in a world today where like subtlety is out the window. We're meant to be masters of subtlety. So again, what we're trying to say is when we understand our true identity, and we can then understand the nefesh, we can then understand the layers in between, within the nefesh, the subconscious, etc., which then becomes more conscious. And I can choose to ignore, to explore. I can choose to let go, to push aside. But the fact that I am consciousness, which is that clean slate, that can give me the availability to become sensitive to those subtleties. But when I don't know who I am, there's the deepest entanglement. Oh, I'm a thought relating to another thought, a feeling relating to another feeling, a belief relating to another belief. There's this entanglement process. I want to change this. You know, famously, as I'm a physical therapist, I work with people, I'm a personal trainer as well. So people who need to go to the gym, typically it's like, oh, I bought my gym membership. And it's an amazing thing because gyms rely on the fact that people won't come to the gym. Because if all the people that were members would come in one time to the gym, there wouldn't be any room. So the maximum capacity is far more in membership than the actuality of people coming to the gym, relying on the fact that people won't come. Amazing. But the fact and point is that a person says, oh, I want to exercise. And what happens is they may go for a couple of weeks, but then something burns out and they don't go anymore. Or, for example, the treadmill becomes a glorified, expensive coat hanger. What happens is the identity was not necessarily there. They had an intention, and that intention can come from deep within the neshama. Deep within the neshama, but the identity was not an identity of a person who is fit and healthy and who exercises. So there's these layers. All I'm speaking to, I'm not speaking to where these are found within our architecture. I'm just speaking to the fact the more I become a balas das, the more I can become aware of these layers and levels of subtlety. That's what we're speaking to. So okay, let's take questions. Yes. You had a question? Yes.
This concept of the hadar and the das and the identity, is it possible for these values to be very, very immature?
100. Yeah.
And that they can be at war with each other.
1000%. 1000%. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So we pick up things. Correct. 100%. We pick things up as we go along. We have to ask, my most baseline drivers, where are they coming from? Are they coming from parents and actually they're not what I want? Are they coming from school, society? Are they coming because I went through a bad experience? All people are bad. So what we have to do, this is one of the internal goals of Sefer HaChaim. What's Sefer HaChaim? Sefer HaChaim is a journaling process that we have, and it's really, really powerful. And we ask 6 questions, about 6 questions. It sometimes changes, and changes in the book by itself, magically. So I may say 6, but when you open the book it says 5, but I think it's 6. That's a joke. Thank you for laughing. He gets it. Thank you for laughing. Gewaldig. Validate my my non-ability to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 6 questions. And what are the questions? The questions are on different areas of life. So for example, how do I view myself physically and my physical health? So what do I know about physical health? These are the starting questions. What do I know? What do I feel? What are my standards? That's one layer of questions we ask on many different fundamental areas of life. But then the next shift, which is the journaling part, is what is the vision I want for my health? Why do I want it? What are the steps for me to get there? What can get in the way? So we ask these questions on each. We ask it on health and the 5 pillars of physical health. What are they? Breathing, hydration, sleeping, eating, and movement, exercise. So we ask it on each of those, and then we draw out my beliefs. We create beliefs. My belief about health is, and I start to live that. Finance. What's my relationship with finance? So in regards to finance, we have financial health, financial literacy. We have the world of finances in career, and then the job that I have. And then we ask on each of those questions, well, do I believe like a good Christian? I mean, it doesn't even say this in the New Testament, but people say money is the root of all evil. It doesn't really say that. It says that if a person, the love of money, so the point is that what we want is to create these most foundational areas in our life. We want to have conversation and create the most upgraded beliefs and values about them. That this is feeding the chadarim of das. And for most people, they don't do that work. You ask for most people in basic things about life, well, what does it mean to you to be healthy? How do you view yourself? Do you view yourself as a healthy person? What are your values and beliefs around health? And it's fascinating because most people haven't done that work. So yes, as you are saying, many people's belief systems are actually immature, and there's entanglements and they fight against each other. And let me just add, I'm not saying that doing this work is always going to change everything, but what we do know is typically it does. Typically it does. The more that we sit and we go through the fundamentals of the major areas of our life, at least having mature conversations, this is why I want to take it. Every Semen Yeshiva from 17, 18 years old, they should be going through Sefer Chaim without any question. Changes you from the inside out.
Is it Sefer?
It's called Sefer Chaim.
Oh, the Already?
No, a book that I wrote. It's a journaling process. It's Cheshbon HaNefesh. So does that speak to what you were speaking to?
It definitely does. I think I know the answer. I think I know the answer, that with these immature value systems, recognizing that you have that and recognizing that it's immature doesn't change the fact
Correct.
that you have that. And
Correct.
it will still affect the way that you live.
1000%.
You're aware of the
Correct.
fact that you're relating to an immature concept.
And that's a darga. That's amazing. I know that I'm relating to an immature belief. That's that's a subtlety. What would most people try to do? The more that we are not in das, I need to change it. At first, just know that it exists and hang on and notice where it's affecting me in my life.
First you try to justify it. Before you try to change it, you try to justify it.
Well, justification of it comes from nefesh. At first, the more we are a baldas, I don't even have to justify it. I've become aware of this. Hirhurim may come to justify, but hang on, Hirhur. This has served me for whatever reason. Let me be with it. And what happens if you can then be aware of that immature belief, what you will start to notice, and if you don't go through this process, you will miss this. Oh, look at that. That affects me here. That affects me there. Oh, wow. Now I know why there's an issue here. And then when you become more comfortable and aware with it, okay, thank you so much. I validate you. And now we're going to upgrade this belief, which is called emunot anarachim. But again, it starts with the backdrop of I am consciousness, this blank slate. And it's this blank slate that can absorb the light, the neshama. Yes?
I just want to clarify that when you say that you can laugh more, I want to go back to what Rob said in the previous class, is that smoke and laughter are not the same thing. Because I see that there are many people that are able to laugh freely, but it feels more like a defense or coping mechanism, or not. It's not smoke. It's not actually laughing. Smoke is a different.
Correct.
Is a different and energetic kind of like.
Yes.
figure.
Yes, 100%. The tzchok that we are experiencing in a state of das is healthy. It's healthy. And if you are with somebody in the same space, they will laugh back with you.
It doesn't even, I think, if this makes sense, I don't even necessarily know if it manifests physically.
Yeah.
It's an internal.
100, it could be 100%. Thank you for bringing that up. 100%. That internality, it could be an internal laugh. Yes, an internal laugh. Okay. So if I could please invite you, let's do just a check-in for a couple of minutes, and then we'll take some last questions. So, Beseda b'chavod. Okay. Just before we end, and afterwards, can you? Thank you. Before we end for today, any closing remarks or questions with what we've discussed? I know it's a lot of information, and we're pushing. Listen, we're pushing. We're pushing every little bit, pushing that little bit more. Be'ezras Hashem. Okay, but any comments, any remarks?
Beautiful, amazing concepts, and doing what we do with our dance and ourselves.
Thank you. Do you find it helpful, pragmatically?
Very
Yeah.
helpful. It's I'm just writing down now. I don't know if you want to hear this or if it
Tell me, yeah.
makes you feel not
No, if it's good for us.
I think I'm wondering if I'm thinking wrongly, similar to what I've learned from avodat and Rabbi that also side. It's like every content I say that's what I learned in this place. That's what I learned here. It's
So you're seeing the parallel with what you've learned with Rav Leuchter and Rav Kellerman and Rav Volby.
right.
That whole Nakuda. As we mentioned at the beginning, those people who have the Messiah, it's very much the same. Yeah. You have anything you wish to add, share?
Thank you for getting us through the war with this. I really felt as over the last 13, 14 days, I could see in little moments how I was not buying into the narrative that was in my life at the time, very trapped in my house with my kids, dealing with all the nitty gritty and dealing with everybody's emotions and not really understanding where everybody's at. I was able to pull back and just separate from
Good.
that
That's
and
it. That's worth everything.
live through it.
That's worth everything.
So thank you.
To improve life quality is everything. Okay. Seder. Be'ezras Hashem, everyone should have bracha, mazel, and hatzlacha. Kol tov, kol yeshuas.